Okay, so we are ready to look at our very first example. So let's give this a try and see how we use these kinematics equations or SUVAT equations, right? So let's look at this example. A person decides to end it all and step off a 30-meter building. Okay, I don't know why a lot of physics problem tends to be very violent, either cars crashing into walls or people jumping out of buildings or cliffs. I don't know. It's some weird things going on, but yeah, let's continue. So any falling objects under gravity, we've learned this already, accelerates at a constant acceleration of 9.81 meters per second squared, right? So everything accelerate this, we learned that. And in the direction, that's the magnitude, the direction is towards the center of the Earth. So how long does he have before he meet his end? And also what velocity does he hit the ground with? All right, so let's find this out because if you're gonna fall off a building, might as well know how long do you have to live. So it's a 3-step process, and every time you follow these 3 steps and it works perfectly. So always start with drawing a diagram. And in particular, I don't mean just draw a pretty diagram. I want you to label 2 things, your axis and the origin. Okay, so in our case, you have a building, let's say somewhere from the window, all right? So if you start from over here, I'd like that to be my origin, okay? And my axis, because I'm just free falling, so I'm going to fall down here. So it's just going to be the y-axis. It's a 1D problem, okay? So which way do you want, up or down? It's up to you. You should get the same. Just because you make your axis pointing up and someone else makes the axis pointing down, it does not change the time you will die or the speed you will land on the ground, right? So it will do both. I'll try positive y this way first, so the standard way, and you'll see how to work with the variables. If you're unsure, always make that choice. That's fine. Sometimes it's easier if you point the other way, but I'll show you both. So that's the first thing. So notice I have my axis, the y direction, and I also have this point where I call y equals 0. So that's my origin, right? Because when we describe positions, we need the origin as well as the axis. All right, good. The second thing is state all the givens and your aim. So state your givens and the aim. Don't do just the given, do both. All right, so axis and origin, the givens and aim. So what does that mean? That means write down out of the SUVAT variables. Let's use blue. All right, so I have SUVAT. Okay, so S, what does it stand for again? It stands for displacement, right? So from here to here, I'm jumping off a 30-meter tall building. So this is 30 meters. Okay, and what's the displacement? 30, but displacement has direction. Am I going in the positive 30 or negative 30 if I define my axis this way? Negative, right? So this is probably the most important thing. All the mistakes, almost 90% of the time, any mistakes with SUVAT equations is people forgot to include minus signs like this. Okay, all right. What does U stand for? Initial velocity. So what's the initial velocity in the y direction? Well, I think the wording says just steps off, right? So you step off the building. So there's no, you're not jumping, you're not jumping down. So let's just assume that's 0, right? So from the wording, if you have any doubts about interpretation, feel free to raise your hand and ask in your TA or your proctor in the exam. They can, if it's an interpretation issue, they will be able to tell you, right? So, but from the wording, that's your best guess. And usually, if you've start doing 10, 15, 20 of these types of problems for practice, you'll start to see a pattern. So it's usually the case. The final velocity, I don't know what it is. Do I know the acceleration? Yes, right? Because everything falls with 9.81. What am I missing? That's right, the sign, right? Because this is positive or negative, right? So this is positive is going up, so the acceleration is pointing downwards. So I need a negative over there. And do I know the time from here to here? No, so question mark, okay? So state all the givens and your aim. The aim is to find the time and the velocity. So that is part A, that is part B of the problem, okay? So my aim is to find T and V. So the third step is find an equation and solve. That's it. Okay, so find an appropriate equation over there. So what do you want? We can find an equation with no t, right? But if I'm trying to solve for t, if I find the equation with no t, which one doesn't have a t? This one, right? So if I find the one with no t, I can't solve for t. So you need a t. This is slightly counterintuitive, right? You need a t in your equation. So I don't want to find one with no t. In fact, I don't know what v is. I'm just given 3. Remember, you need 3 out of 5. So if you have 3 information, I want to utilize everything, but I don't want one with v, because if I, for example, if I pick this one, I would have a hard time finding what should I plug in for v, right? So what you want to do is to pick an equation with no v, all right? Which one doesn't have v? Can you see? I think the third one, right? So let's plug this in. So the third step, right? Draw a diagram. Secondly, state your givens and your aims. And now you're ready to solve. And I'm going to use, so for part A, I'm going to use S equals to UT plus half AT squared. So the first step in presenting a solution, write down which equation you're going to use, all right? And then plug in the numbers. So S is minus 30. Now it's literally just plug and chug. So 0 times T plus 1/2. What's A? A is 9.81 minus 9.81 and T squared. Okay. So the next step, right? Don't try to do the math at the same time. Don't try to multiply this together, even if you can divide it in one go. But because this step to this is good presentation, I'm showing you what's the best way to present your work so that the reader is very clear how you get the partial credits. And also it's just even if you don't care about the points, this is the points also reflects how professional your writing is, right? So you can show the reader where every number comes from. So S is this, U is this, T is just copied, half is just copied, A is this, T squared is just copied. So everything is very clear. The next step, we do the algebra. So 0 times T is just 0. So now I can the next step is simple math, right? And 1/2, so you can use your calculator. Sometimes people approximate it as 10 if you want to just do estimate. But yeah, you can do this, right? And now this is just, the rest is just plugging in, rearranging this, right? So negative and negative, so cancels. You can put the T over to this side, and basically you have 2 times 30 divided by 9.81. Now, before I take the square root, be careful. I have square over here, right? So when I take the square root, what's missing? There should be plus or minus, okay? If I ask you, for example, x squared equals to 4, what's x? It's plus or minus the square root of 4 because it's plus or minus 2. So there's 2 solutions. Remember, whenever there's a square, especially with these 2 equations, you have 2. Now we'll see. So you plug this in the calculator, and you can double check with yourself. I think I got 2.473. Okay. So notice I didn't write any units, because if I'm using the standard SI units of meters and seconds and kilograms, then it will always come out as SI units. That's the good thing about standard SI units. You start off with SI, you end up with SI. Okay, so now I have 2 solutions. Which one makes sense? Well, that's the time taken. Will the time be positive or negative? Will I take positive 2 seconds, or will I take negative 2 seconds? What does negative mean? It doesn't mean anything, right? So we'll comment more on negative in a moment, but we're going to reject the negative. So use your, to do that, we basically need to physically reject the negative signs. So we'll comment more on that in a second. And we also want to round it. So the last couple of things to do is to reject the unphysical. Unphysical just means not meaningful values. So usually negative values, but sometimes it's meaningful. So you need to check whether you do that, and also put it in the right significant figures. This is less important, but very importantly is units. Okay, so the time is let's say everything is given in let's say it's given in 2 significant figures. You round it to around 2.5 seconds, right? So let's say it's given like that, right? Then that is the answer for part A. Okay, right? Let's repeat that. So that's 2.5. Let's repeat that for part B. So this time I actually have this, right? So I can actually fill in the blanks. I now know this is 2.5. All right. To find V, you actually have a freedom to pick any one of them you like to find that. Okay, so so it's actually okay, right? But let's say you just want to be safe. If you pick something with a T, right, you're going to use your answer from part A. Now, if you are not confident with that, maybe it's not a good idea to use it. However, having said that, you will have partial credit. So if you use any errors from part A and do part B correctly, you'll have full credits for part B on its own. So, however, if you just want to be sure, why not? Let's pick one without T, right? So we won't even utilize this, and we'll pick one with no T. Can you find it? It's the fourth one, right? V squared equals to U squared plus 2AS. So let's use that one. So now it's completely independent on my part A answer. So we'll repeat it. First step, write down the equation you're going to use. Second step, plug in the variables, plug in all the givens. So V, I don't know what that is, so just that stays as V squared. U is 0, 2, A is minus 9.8. Let's keep it as 2 significant figures. And S is minus 30. Okay. Remember, the minus signs are important. If you miss one, you won't get positive here, and that's problematic, right? And let's see, what's my number I get? I get 24. So once you do the square root, you get plus or minus 24.26. Okay, so that alone over here, I shouldn't put underline here because that's not the final answer. That's just the math. Now you include sort of the physics to it, right? You think about which value is correct. Should I use positive or negative? Aha, this one is negative because my positive means going up, but the velocity, the final velocity, should be negative. So remember, negative is just not. It is important to, when you take square roots, to include the negative solution. So our final velocity, so the 3 dots is the shorthand for therefore. At some point, I'll stop annotating my shorthand, so once you get more used to it. So we need to pick the negative one. Let's use 2 significant figures, in this case, just 24, and add the units. That's a complete answer like that, okay? Right, so you can see that once you have these equations memorized, this is how you apply to it. So now I have 2 challenges for you. I try to calculate, so try to find V using another SUVAT equation, using your answer from part A, using part A. Okay, so we've got this. So in principle, you have to use another one, see if you get the same answer, or when after the rounding, see if you get the same answer. And secondly, try to repeat part A with Y pointing downwards. Actually repeat the whole problem with Y, positive Y going down, okay? And see what happens, okay? Yeah, I'll leave that to you to check it out, and you should get the same conclusion for both cases, okay? All right.